our skills, the tools and techniques that we learn can be used anywhere. And I mean that personally as well, not just professionally, but personally. You sometimes learn more from a terrible boss than you do from a good boss. And one of the worst bosses I ever had was one of the most stuck in his ways dinosaurs that I've ever worked for. But he really lit something in me that made me go, I will never, ever be that kind of leader.
Welcome to KPI Fireside. Our mission is simple: to improve companies and to improve careers through continuous improvement. In every episode, we explore the spark, the moment, the mindset, or the method that ignites real change. Whether you're just starting out or leveling up, you'll find the insights and inspiration to fuel your next improvement. Welcome back to KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. I am your host, Keith Norris. Our guest today is Lyndsay MacLeod. Lyndsay is an award-winning continuous improvement professional with over 20 years experience leading large-scale transformational change across engineering, manufacturing, and financial services. She's a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, certified process professional master, Agile Scrum Master, and operational excellence coach. She has recently been focused on building lean, agile capability with technology teams. Lyndsay has proven success in driving sustainable performance improvement, streamlining complex processes, and embedding cultures of excellence and accountability. Her passion lies in understanding the role of leadership in building and developing high-performing teams and enabling others to thrive through coaching, mentoring, and continuous learning. Lyndsay, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. What an honor to be here to talk about a passionate subject. It's just amazing. So thanks.
That is so awesome. I do detect a little bit of an accent. Tell us where you're connecting from.
So I am just outside Edinburgh, just to the west of Edinburgh. Yes, my accent is a little bit odd. I was born in the northeast of England. So anyone listening from the UK might recognise a Geordie accent. But I've travelled quite a lot and I lived in London for a while. So I think my accent's probably become quite hybrid over the years.
That's so awesome. I love hearing different accents from around the world. And I actually think that there's a truth in this that's very relevant to this discipline of process improvement, in that we're all speaking English, right? But the accents are a little bit different. And sometimes, it might be a little hard to understand if you're in a different area. Process improvement is kind of similar. Like, there's a lot of things that are very similar, but when they get applied at like the company level or the specific department level, there can be a lot of nuance into understanding it.
For sure.
So I noticed from your background that you've worked in a number of different industries, and you mentioned how much you enjoy your work now. Tell us a little bit about your journey. Like, where did you start and how did you get on this process improvement as a career track?
It was kind of by accident. So I'd been working in the hospitality industry from leaving university, but kind of got to the point where the shifts, the unsociable hours, the not particularly generous pay and benefits packages were kind of really sort of making me question whether it was a long-term career. So I'd taken some time to go traveling, ended up back in the northeast of England and staying with my parents, not really sure what I wanted to do or where I was going to go, just knowing really that the hospitality industry was no longer for me. And I saw a role advertised, and the role was CIP coordinator. And I can remember thinking, not really sure, but read the job spec and thought I could probably do about 60% of that. It talked about, administration and managing training and supporting a continuous improvement director. So I thought, I've got nothing to lose. I'll give it a go. I'll apply. So I interviewed that afternoon and I was offered the job the same day. And I was just blown away by the passion and the commitment and the story that the CIP director kind of told me at that interview. And so for the first couple of weeks, I questioned my decision every single day because I felt like I was learning two different languages. First of all, the language of CIP, people were talking about things like FMEAs and VIPs and FMEAs, and it just all sounded really strange to me. And also learning the language of engineering and manufacturing and being in that kind of industry where mass manufacturing was going on. So it took me a while to kind of find my feet, if I'm honest. Gradually started to understand what Lean was, what Six Sigma was, why it was being adopted by the organization that I was working for. The benefits started to really kind of resonate and kind of click in my head. And all of a sudden I thought, I get this. I understand what process improvement is. I understand what continuous improvement is. And I've never looked back.
That's so interesting. The industry that you were in your first CIP, was that continuous improvement professional? What does CIP stand for?
They called it the Continuous Improvement Program. So my boss was the director of continuous improvement. So he was the director of CIP. My role was really to coordinate across the whole program on his behalf. So I did really fairly simple stuff, I guess, scheduling training, organizing training materials, making sure that the master black belts, I didn't even know what a master black belt was when I kicked off this journey, but making sure that they had everything that they needed to deliver successful training. And then over time, my boss sort of said to me, I think you should do your green belt. So I did. I did. And it was just such a huge learning curve. That kind of 2.5, 3 years in that role was going from no understanding of continuous improvement whatsoever to becoming a certified green belt, but also having the opportunity to go to university and study languages at the same time. It was phenomenal. And then I know we're going to talk about leadership through this whole conversation. But my boss at the time was the most phenomenal leader that I think I've ever worked for in my entire career. He saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself at that time. He promoted, he supported, encouraged, he pushed when he needed to. And he just made me believe that I could do it. I could be a future leader. And he gave me so much belief in myself. And that's something that I've never forgotten, and it's something that I've taken forward and hopefully have been able to pass on or pay it forward through my career.
What are some of the things that you learned from that leader that you've now tried to, make part of your own behaviors?
He was passionate about people and development and allowing people to thrive. So he was one of those leaders who would never take credit for someone else's work. He would also always say, Lyndsay did this, Lyndsay finished that off, Lyndsay should take the credit for that, which I think is phenomenal. He spoke to everyone that he met, whether it was the receptionist, whether it was someone on the shop floor, whether it was one of the CEOs of one of the three businesses, exactly the same way, with humility, with respect. And I can remember thinking that is the way to be, treat everyone exactly the same way with respect and humility.
So you came from manufacturing, industrial, and you went into banking, financial services, and you've worked a lot in technology. So there's certain patterns that I'm sure you're seeing. And I think sometimes people think, oh, these industries, they're so different. But I'm guessing that your perspective is that there's a lot of similarities. And you said that with how AI looks like something that you've seen before.
Yeah, so a process is a process, right? Whether you're trying to produce pumps, valves, and seals to go offshore, or whether you're trying to produce capabilities and features for a mobile banking app for your retail banking customer. It's still a process. Steps within that process still need to be followed to make sure that there's a customer output at the back end. What that output is almost irrelevant because the process will flow, the process will have breaks, the process will have things that aren't working as efficiently or as effectively as it could be. So I think one of the things that I've loved about this whole CI journey and this continuous improvement career is that our skills, the tools and techniques that we learn can be used anywhere. And I mean that personally as well, not just professionally, but personally. It's a skill set that is so applicable in so many different situations. I genuinely feel like we're lucky to have that training and experience.
So knowing what you know about how processes work and how different industries work, what's your personal take on, is AI going to take my job? Is AI going to take your job? Where do you find comfort in investing in, your personal skill set and where your career is going to go next?
So who knows what's going to happen? This technology is moving at a speed of light. But I think in the short term, the way AI will help is to take away the repetitive, manual, non-value add type activities that none of us really want to do in a day-to-day job. So I've just finished quite a big piece of work looking at Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, and the use cases that that can be applied to. And really, what people were saying during that piece of work is they want something that can take data from an Excel spreadsheet, populate a Microsoft PowerPoint, and then give, a level of commentary, which is
Hmm.
great because nobody wants to sit and pull data out of Excel spreadsheets and
Yeah.
populate PowerPoint templates all day. That's mind numbing, right? But actually, what AI will do if it's done right is then allow you more creativity, more innovation, more time to learn and grow. Who knows what will actually happen in practice? But in theory, that's what I would like to see happening.
That sounds like a really interesting project. What was the problem statement or the project charter that you were taking on in that situation?
So I guess in a regulated industry like financial services, it's really being smart around where AI can be used. So Microsoft offered a number of licenses for us to trial and test and see, where we thought the best value or the best bang for the buck would be. So that was really almost saying to the teams, if you're given this tooling, where would you use it? How would it help you? And what kind of outcomes would you expect to see? And pulling those use cases together. So for some things, and I go back to those really simple examples, if people are trying to pull reports together from lots of different Excel spreadsheets and there's lots of different data in lots of different places, AI or automation is fantastic at consolidating that all in one place. The creativity then comes around, well, what's the commentary? Where's the root cause analysis? Where's the trend mapping? What can we do to forecast our future performance? That kind of stuff is where potentially humans will get more creativity to think, and then AI will start to catch up on that journey as well.
So I want to just zero in on a couple of themes there. So as a process improvement leader, you're using words that some people who haven't been through at least some basic like white belt or
Sorry.
yellow belt training. No, this is great because part of what we want to do with this podcast is introduce people to new concepts, new ideas. They hear a word, and hopefully we explain it enough that they can decide if they're interested in it. But I think one thing that you're explaining that I've seen as a pattern is if you know that a root cause analysis is a thing and it exists, you can know to ask for one. And if you're in an organization that doesn't have like, hey, when this happens, you need to do a root cause analysis, you might be the first person to say, hey, I heard about this thing called a root cause analysis, and this might be a good time for us to use one of those. But
Yeah,
if you've been,
absolutely. It's
yeah,
like applying the tooling to the problem and knowing what you're hoping to achieve as a business outcome. I think that's the key thing. The so what sometimes gets lost. I've heard a lot of technology teams really itching to get hold of AI because it's going to, solve the world. But really the question is, what is it that you want to achieve? What is the business outcome that you want to achieve and how can the tooling help you to do that?
yeah, that's so interesting. The theme that's on my mind today is just the value of this process improvement, education, and understanding. Because yeah, the AI models might already be trained with everything that a yellow belt, green belt, black belt knows, but if you don't know to prompt the AI for, use a certain tool, then it's out there. But how's it going to benefit you if you don't use the tool? I think that's probably applies to all of us with all the education that we've ever learned, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
um, it has me thinking a lot about the value of knowing not just what the tool is and how to use it, but the situations that you find yourself to use the tools. What are some of those tools that you said that you did a green belt training, and there's this debate that I see a lot on LinkedIn about it's not about how many green belts you have, but I think it's sort of like having an education. Like you have to have an education to learn what the things are. Then how you use that education is different. Are there some tools in that green belt tool set that you have found that you call on more than others, perhaps?
Yeah. So in a technology environment, there's a couple of things that I think are so powerful. The first one is value stream mapping. So if you think about the purpose of technology teams, they are there to deliver software capabilities and features and to do that quickly to keep up with the pace of the market. So that flow needs to be as lean and as simple and as efficient as possible. But in some of these kind of bigger, more complex organizations where again, work's been offshored or outsourced, or you've got third party vendors, that value stream can be really complicated and really fragmented. So I found that value stream mapping really helps the teams to understand the flow of the software delivery and how it can be improved. So where are our bottlenecks? Where are our impediments? What is slowing down the flow of the feature delivery, for example? So value stream mapping has been really useful. Another one that I've kind of found has been fantastic is control chart. So what I was starting to see is in a couple of technology teams that I've worked with, the reporting at the end of the month was RAG status. So red, amber, green. Red, you're failing. Someone's going to get hauled over the coals. You're doing all right. Green, you're great. So we'll not talk about that this month. You can sit in the corner and stay quiet kind of thing. So if we use control charts, we can actually explain to people and get people to understand that there's natural fluctuation and natural variation in every single process that we're delivering. That might be flow of software features, it might be pumping out valves for industry, whatever it might be. And actually, using control charts and the thinking that goes with control charts. So something might have fluctuated over the month that in a RAG status would flag up as a red or a green, whereas actually it's normal process performance and it's not something that we need to get interested in or excited about this month. And those control charts help drive different behaviors. So rather than red is bad, you're going to be in trouble. If something has gone outside of the control chart specification, then the question is why? What happened? Let's do the root cause analysis. If it's a good thing, then let's put that best practice in place and show the teams and ask them to adopt. If it was something that didn't work as well as we hoped and it's dropped below a specification limit, then again, root cause analysis, why, what happened, what went wrong. But how can we learn from that and make sure that it doesn't happen again? And that in itself drives a learning culture, a performance culture, a culture where people are engaged in the improvement as opposed to really nervous to go into this conversation this month because we're showing a red on our dashboard. And it changes that whole thinking around what's going on our dashboard this month.
I love that. Control charts are a huge favorite of mine. In fact, I'll throw a little plug for freecontrolcharts.com.
Oh, brilliant.
For anybody that doesn't know what a control chart is, I mean, everybody's probably seen one at some point. You might not recognize it. Could you just give us a quick, explain it to somebody who doesn't know what they are, what they look like, and just briefly, what it tells you?
I'll try. Yeah, so it's around a run chart to begin with. So mapping all of the different points that you have for your process across a period of time. It might be a month, it might be longer. And then using Six Sigma and using standard deviations from the mean to plot the control limits on that run chart. There is a way of just overlaying a specification limit or a control limit on a run chart so that you can start to see if your process is dipped above or below those control chart limits or those specification limits, then that's where you would start to do some investigation and some root cause analysis. And they're really powerful tools.
I'll add to that a little bit. So a control chart, a lot of times the ones I see are the ones that exist inside KPI Fire have they have the median of the points down the middle, and then they have like a green band, and then a yellow band, and then a red band outside of that represent the different sigmas, the standard deviations. And so if you've ever sat in a business review where somebody was trying to explain why today's data point was a little bit lower than yesterday's, and you're like, why are we talking about this? It's going to be up tomorrow. We all know that. A control chart can help you better realize that and save time in those meetings where you don't end up in this long conversation around why, some value went down by some small matter yesterday. It's not a trend just because it's lower today than it was yesterday.
That's a much better explanation than I gave. Thank you.
I'm a huge fan of control charts. They're probably one of my favorite tools. So I'm glad that you gave me a chance to talk about those. Thanks, Lindsay.
You're welcome. It was completely unrehearsed.
No, that was that's great. Well, as a process improvement leader, you talked about uh, the value stream map. Value stream mapping is one of these things that we talk about a lot on the podcast. I spend a lot of time thinking and working in value stream maps. And sometimes I feel like companies, like, every once in a while they pull this value stream map up and put some effort into it, and then it probably, like, I don't know, disappears until the next time. As a best practice, how should you treat that value stream map? Is it a one-time thing? Is it something you should pay regular attention to? How should it be used?
So I guess there's so many different uses for a value stream map. But yeah, it should be a living document. In an absolute ideal world, it should be updated with current data. It should be updated every single time that there's, a significant process change. I know in reality that's probably easier said than done. Value stream maps can be used for so many different purposes. I've used them with so if it's a quite big, complex end-to-end process, I've used them with teams to kind of get them to understand that there's upstream teams that are doing their part of the process and their part of the role. And there's downstream teams who will receive the work that you're currently processing. And that can help people to understand that they're part of something much bigger and a real kind of truly holistic view of what they're contributing to. So I think that's really important. Identifying blockers and impediments, which is really important in that kind of flow of software delivery type environment. So what is stopping or blocking or slowing down the flow of the software delivery? And by stream maps are brilliant for doing that. And then I think just good for that stakeholder engagement as well. So being able to have conversations with senior leaders with a visual can be 100 times quicker and more efficient and more effective than using lots and lots of words. So I have used them with senior leaders before to get them to kind of understand, for example, how complex a process might be because of handoffs to third parties or vendors or offshore agents, whatever it might be. Getting that kind of conversation with senior leaders, and so value stream maps can be great for that.
Yeah, they're great. Pictures are always such a great way to illustrate a problem, or to bring attention to a problem. And God, if you ever find yourself in one of those situations where people are like pointing fingers, going back and forth, like, a picture is usually a really good
1,000
resource to
words.
say,
Yeah,
here's
exactly.
where we're at. Here's where we're trying to get to. This is what's in the way. That's
Yes,
great. Are you struggling to ignite real change in your continuous improvement program? Firestarter is your field guide. Real stories, proven strategies, no fluff. Get it now on Amazon. I wonder if your background in manufacturing, where lean is definitely more popular, accepted as, like, best practice methodology, versus software technology, where agile seems to be the predominant, you know, as a process person myself, I look at the two things and I think that there are a lot of similarities, maybe some different names put on things. Do you think that your exposure to different industries was part of giving you that unique perspective?
absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the challenges when we started to do this specific lean implementation into technology teams was the pushback around leans for manufacturing. So what do we need it for here? But actually my argument was that you need it even more in a technology organization. And there's a couple of reasons behind that. So if you just think about the complexity in these huge global banks, the heritage organizations, right? So there were banks first that have had to become digitized, as opposed to some of the newer challenger banks who've had the digital proposition first and then gone out and attracted banking customers. So these big heritage organizations, they've got legacy technical debt, processes that haven't already or necessarily been kind of decommissioned as legacy tech has been decommissioned, operating models that are riddled with bureaucracy because it's a regulated industry. All of that is just waste on top of waste on top of waste. So Lean to me just seemed like the obvious place to start to remove waste, to enable that flow of software delivery to become simpler, quicker, and more efficient. And then the other thing around that is that in technology, when it's software development, you can't necessarily always see the work in progress. Obviously, if you go on the shop floor, you can see the inventory, you can see where it's safe to walk, you can see, where there's a potential danger. In a software delivery environment, you don't have that. Somebody can be working in isolation on a piece of code for days at a time. So actually, using those lean fundamental principles or the 5 principles of lean, to me, it just seemed like the most obvious thing to do to apply it to a technology environment. It was a hard sell and not everybody bought in right away, but the successes on the back of that have been really significant.
Yeah, I wonder, one thing that I'm thinking of is as I'm thinking about your background and, manufacturing, industry, and then also like the technology, the software, the agile is those are two fields that are predominantly dominated by men, typically
Mm.
men in manufacturing, and a lot of men in software. What are some things either that you've had to do differently, or do you think the thinking that you bring has been part of what has helped you be successful in both those industries?
I've wrestled with this since I first kind of went into manufacturing and engineering. So it was really tough in that environment. I was the youngest of 5 females, I think. I felt very judged. I felt very vulnerable. I felt very exposed because the balance of male female in that environment, and it wasn't necessarily healthy for a young female. It wasn't necessarily an environment where I was welcomed with open arms. And I really struggled with it to begin with. And I can remember my boss at the time saying to me, the best thing that you can do is get your head down, do your job, do it well, and earn credibility for the work that you're doing. And that kind of stuck with me. But I think the other thing that I learned back then was that you need resilience, you need a really thick skin, unfortunately, and you need a sense of humor. So you need to learn when to laugh things off, you need to learn when to roll with the punches, and you need to learn when to pick yourself up and dust yourself off. I think as I've kind of developed in my career and moved on a little bit, those things have all served me really well. So let the work do its, the talking. Get your head down, do a good job, and let the work do the talking. Resilience is everything. A sense of humor takes you so far, but I have found it quite isolating at times, and I have definitely felt that it's not necessarily the strongest position to be in as one of the few females in a predominantly male environment.
You mentioned that the advice that your boss gave you in that situation, was that the same boss from earlier that you had mentioned, or was this a different boss? And
Same boss.
okay, and I
Yeah.
wasn't quite clear if that, because the same advice could be received as great feedback or terrible feedback and I wasn't, when you first said that, I'm like, oh, was that the right thing to say or was that the wrong thing to say?
I mean, I don't think there's any right answers. I think for a lot of young females, paving the way in what is predominantly a male environment, whether that's tech, whether that's engineering, whether that's manufacturing, you do have to find your own way and your own strategy and your own kind of sense of self as you navigate through it. It's not easy. I think I was lucky in that my boss, my mentor, probably had, well, he did have daughters who were a little bit older than I was at that point, but he had obviously experienced some of their challenges, and he was very fair and he was very open and he was very pragmatic around you're going to have to find this out for yourself. I haven't got the answers or the solutions for you. But then to your point earlier, you sometimes learn more from a terrible boss than you do from a good boss. And one of the worst bosses I ever had was one of the most misogynist, chauvinistic, stuck in his ways dinosaurs that I've ever worked for. But he really lit something in me that made me go, I will never, ever be that kind of leader.
I think that's such an interesting insight. And I always look for lessons in the conversation. I think that there's probably something in you that makes you different from the very first day you had your first opportunity in continuous improvement to look at that situation and say, how can I use this great example, that first boss, and learn from it?
Mm.
But also you made a decision, how can I use that terrible example of the bad boss and not necessarily, I'm sure that it probably beat you down a little bit on certain days, but at this point, looking back, it seems that you've chosen to light a fire in you, maybe make you a little bit angry or something, maybe like want to prove them wrong. I know I've found myself in situations where somebody said you can't do it, or I don't think you can do this, and I'm like, I'll show you. So rather than like I'm going to listen to that advice, I chose to harness that negative energy and like use it in a good way. And it seems like there's something
So,
about you where you've done that, you faced that decision, and you've chosen to do that.
yeah, absolutely. I think in continuous improvement, it's tough in that you're trying to pave the way, you're trying to take other people on the journey. You're probably a bit of a lone voice most of the time. So you do need resilience, you do need tenacity, you do need determination, and you need not to be able to, if you get a no or a knockback, you need to be able to bounce back from that and find another way or another approach. So I think naturally in this world that we've chosen to work in this kind of continuous improvement, you do have to be a bit resilient and a bit tough, actually, a little bit tough.
I like that. I think that's good advice. And I'm sure that there's probably, this discipline, this line of work, this type of jobs and process work, process improvement work probably isn't for everyone, but certainly it sounds like you found something that you really love and something you want to continue to make your career. Let's say, maybe looking back at somebody who is in a situation where maybe they haven't chosen to get into this line of work specifically, or maybe even for a leader that's interviewing people for their next job. Is there some maybe advice that you could give yourself thinking of like the position you were in when you were, right before you decided to apply for this job as a CIP? What sort of lessons could you share with somebody like that?
Grab every opportunity. If it's there, take it with both hands and run with it because these opportunities don't come along very often. Definitely stay true to yourself. A little bit of humility, a little bit of integrity, a little bit of respect for everyone around you goes a long, long way. I'm trying to think what I would say to my kids actually. So my kids are like 16 and 14 and starting to go out into the big wide world. And it's probably similar to what I would have told my younger self. Treat people with care and respect, work hard, take the opportunities, take the challenges, don't be intimidated, don't, get beaten down by the first no or the first knock. And it's similar advice that I would give to my kids, I think.
I'm curious what, the advice that you're thinking of for your own children or people that are that formative parts of life where they're choosing the disciplines to get into. What advice do you have for them?
So what I've said to my kids is find something that you love, that you enjoy, and that you're passionate about and follow that path. Because if you believe in something and if you're committed to something, then that energy will just radiate. So that's kind of what they're both following very, very different paths, but that's okay because they're very, very different kids. And ultimately, if you're doing something that really gets you out of bed in the morning and makes you feel like you're doing something that's helpful or helping other people to grow and develop, and that's just amazing. So that's really where to focus your time and effort and energy, I think.
Okay, this last section here, Lindsay, will be what we call the rapid fire. These are just some
Oh,
kind of
okay.
quick questions, kind of just top of mind answers. The most important job of a leader is to
Okay. Motivate, inspire, provide safe guardrails, and communicate.
love it. Excellent. Do you have a favorite go-to problem-solving tool that you find yourself using most often or a favorite?
We've talked about control charts. I'm a huge fan of control charts. I also love FMEA. I've used that quite a few times in my career. It works well in a regulated industry where there is a lot of risk. And so being able to document those risks, understand what mitigation actions are you moving the dial in terms of the risk score? I love FMEA as well.
And could you just explain what FMEA stands for anybody that might not be super familiar with it?
Yeah. So it's failure modes effects analysis, and it is a piece of analysis. So in a highly risk driven environment, you capture all of the potential risks, you capture the effects of those risks, you capture mitigating effects. So what would you do if that risk manifested itself? How would you close it down, or how would you close it off? And you give each risk a score. So, based on detection, occurrence, and severity. So, as you manage your FMEA and you manage your risk environment, you can improve it by using the FMEA tooling, and it's pretty powerful where there's risks.
Thank you. Here's another finish this sentence. Continuous improvement is.
Not for the faint-hearted.
Okay. Next question is, do you have a favorite question, one that you like to use in practice?
It's not necessarily a question of show me, show me. I like to see things. So, if somebody tells me about something, I'll ask them to show me. I guess I'll go back to that Gemba thing. I'd rather show me on your screen or take me to that place where that's happening. So it's more about I need the visual. Show me what you're talking about.
I can relate to that quite a bit. That's awesome. Is there a book that you would recommend to somebody interested in this, whether it's process improvement or just some other topic, a book that is a good starting place?
Oh yeah, there's a couple. So when I was first starting out, I read The Goal
Great one.
by Eldrat, which it just resonated and it just kind of really made sense to me about theory of constraints, where the bottleneck is, why you need to work on the weakest part of the process. So I've always recommended that if I'm delivering any training, that people go away and read that book. I think as a leader, The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I know it's an oldie, but it's a goodie. I still flick back to that book. Even now, I still go back and have a look at it and think about the principles, and it just even now has so much resonance.
Yeah, that's one that somewhere on that shelf, but I recommend that one highly as well. Definitely second that recommendation. Thank you. That's a great one. What is something that you're excited about, looking forward to currently?
So I'm looking for a new opportunity. So I was recently made redundant. So I am really excited about what's next. Really open to kind of hopefully being exposed to some other industries. I've been in financial services for a long time now, so I'm really looking forward to hopefully a little bit of different exposure into some different industry. But really continuing this kind of where can we use lean? We can use lean everywhere. So let's make it work. Let's show people how you can apply lean and Six Sigma and all of the continuous improvement type methodologies and bringing it to life in different places. I think that's quite an exciting thing.
Well, that's a great opportunity potentially for some people listening to this. I know that we have a lot of leaders who are always looking to expand their team, and that's great to know that that's something that you're interested in. So hopefully we can
Definitely.
help you perhaps with a few introductions. That would be great.
That'd be great.
Well, Lyndsay, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. We really appreciate your time and your experience. And for anybody that does want to get in touch with you, what would be the best way to connect with you?
LinkedIn would be the best way to start conversations. I'm really interested to hear if anyone else has had kind of lean agile experiences or trying to apply lean in technology teams. I'd be fascinated to hear how they kind of experienced that. People who've moved across different industries, how they've, taken their lean learning from one industry and applied it in another. That would be really interesting. And also that leadership element as well, hints and tips for being a great leader. Has anyone got anything that they want to share? And I guess the other thing that I'm always passionate about is as a female in a male dominated environment, what's been your coping strategy? How have you managed to promote and progress your career in a tough environment? That would be really interesting.
Wonderful. And thank you so much for joining us today and sharing those
Thank
stories
you.
with us. You had some really, really great insights and perspective on this topic of continuous improvement and process improvement. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And it's such a treat to be able to talk about continuous improvement for a whole hour. What an absolute treat.
So fun. Yeah. Thanks again, Lyndsay.
Thank
And
you.
you bet. And this concludes our episode of KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. If you have enjoyed today's episode, be sure to add a comment, like, follow, subscribe on the socials, reach out to Lyndsay or I on LinkedIn, and share the podcast with friends or colleagues who are as passionate about continuous improvement as you are. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, keep driving progress and sparking change. This episode is brought to you by KPI Fire, the all-in-one platform for continuous improvement. With KPI Fire, you can align strategy, drive execution, and engage your people. So whether you're leading a team or driving enterprise-wide change, KPI Fire helps you deliver real results. Learn more at www.kpifire.com.